So we all know that Kojima is very meticulous with the way he designs his games, and when it comes to his trailers he's very much the same way, but he always does his own unique thing, like hiring burn victims to promote his game, and I've always appreciated that because burn victims need work too, but it's nice to see a trailer that stays true to the game's art direction as opposed to the usual marketing firm's safe, formulaic approach that we tend to see with most games. So I thought it might be a good idea to try and document everything I saw in the new Death Stranding trailer that I think is interesting. So the first thing that comes to mind is just how similar the opening to this trailer is to the first one. So the interesting thing that I notice is amongst all these gray crabs, there's always one orange crab that's in focus. Now that may not seem important, but take a look at this. Coincidence? Yeah, maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of references to Metal Gear Solid in this game. So dead animals with wires coming out of them? That's still a thing. So I want you to keep an eye on this baby doll and the area surrounding this tunnel. So clearly the setting in this trailer is just this destroyed city, but also notice that this rainbow is upside down. Now as for the tendrils behind these planes, I'm not so sure they're cables because it doesn't look like they're actually connected to anything. I think they're just dangling behind them. Now I think it's pretty clear that this is Guillermo del Toro that just has a giant scar across his entire forehead, but let's take a second to analyze the pin on his lapel. So I see three things here. First of all, the title across the bottom that says United Cities of America, the web pattern across the states that looks like it might be an epicenter of some sort, and the title at the top that says Bridges. United Cities of America to me sounds as if the government has somehow fallen and all that's left are just these major population centers. So Kojima mentioned that the game's title is in reference to something from another world becoming stranded in our world.
Whales and dolphins, they sometimes conduct mass stranding. If they are alive, then it's life stranding. If they're dead, it's death stranding. This title refers to something from another world stranding in our world. And strand, the word in psychological terms means twisted thread and bonds. And this title, really, the theme is to connect.
So I suppose one means of an otherworldly being coming to a different world would be through some sort of bridge. So perhaps that suggests that this man somehow played a role in these events that caused the world to turn into what it is here, and that whatever event did cause this may have occurred in New York. So as this man watches these planes fly overhead, you can tell that he sees something that kind of catches him off guard. Now what did he see that scared him? I'm not really sure there's any way of telling. And I don't think it was that plane because that's not really something you would see last second. So you can hear a voice there, but I have no idea what it's saying. So I don't know why this tank is covered in organs, or why there's oil spilling out everywhere, or why there's bones on the side of it. Notice how even the tank has a cable coming out of it. Yeah, and these guys are actually skeletons. So just taking a second to identify everything. This is an M36 Jackson, this is a Mitsubishi A6M0, and these are American World War II era paratroopers. So far, everything here is World War II era, except for this guy. Now I find it pretty interesting that this guy starts sniffing around as if he could smell something weird. And then this happens. I thought it was a nice touch. So it seems to me when he connects his tube to that tank, that it somehow wakes up that baby. So notice how this guy has the exact same handcuff that Norman has in the first trailer, but it's on the other arm. And how that tube he used to connect to that baby tank goes into his shirt. Perhaps it's like an artificial umbilical cord that connects to his navel, something that Norman doesn't have. I feel like it's important to note that this doll bumps into his leg, and that there's a wire wrapped around his leg, dragging it into the tunnel. I find this part very interesting because clearly he can tell that there's something dangerous inside that tunnel, but he's taking a moment to collect himself here. And it even seems like somehow that baby is synced up to this guy's actions. And then he rounds the corner, poised to confront any danger that he thinks might be lurking inside of that tunnel. So you have this guy who's clearly wandering around trying to stay hidden, and the appearance of that black water or oil and maybe that doll somehow notified him that there's danger nearby, and that he would be forced to confront it, but he would only be able to do so somehow with the help of that baby. So I'm thinking somehow that these babies may be weapons of some sort, or else if he felt threatened, why would he feel the need to connect to that baby and then somehow round the corner as if he's ready to aim that baby at something? Also notice how all these dead animals appeared with that black water. That wasn't there before. So you'll notice that this entire tunnel is full of those cables just beneath the water's surface. I think this whole sequence with the red flashing light is meant to drive your attention away from these areas here, and they certainly look a little familiar. I think this just might be me overthinking things, but I would imagine if you're walking through water full of cables, you might get tripped up, but it seems like these guys are walking right through them. So here's another guy who looks like he's from the modern era. So keep an eye on this guy's compass. When he uses his powers, his compass starts to spaz out. This reminds me of this part from Metal Gear Solid 5. So clearly this guy is connected to these skeletons, and yes, they are skeletons, and maybe that gives him the ability to control them. But he's also got a cable coming right down his neck here. I'm not sure if that really means anything though. Spazzing out compass again. And again. And let's bring this back up again. And for some reason his face is clean after he looks at that baby. And the look on his face that kind of says, "I got you now," kind of makes me believe that somehow looking at that baby gave him some sort of info that he needed. Now if you look in the bottom left hand corner, you'll see the name Decima, and in Roman mythology she was one of the Fates, and it was her job to measure the thread of life with her rod, and she was also considered to be the god of childbirth, so that seems quite fitting given the themes portrayed in this trailer. So I don't know if Kojima made a company just as a joke to make a reference, but he's done the same thing before. During the development of Metal Gear Solid 5, he did the same thing where he made Moby Dick Studio as a reference to Ahab, the name that Snake had, and the gigantic flaming whale you saw in the beginning of the game. I've seen like 10, maybe 20 different theories about this game that make sense to me, so I'm not even going to try to make up my own because who knows at this point, there's really no telling. So what did we accomplish with this? Probably nothing, but that's everything that I found so far.